Welcome into another G-Rated, where we talk about our favorite movies and TV shows. I'm your host, Gerald. Today, I am joined by Shawn, Totri, and Derek to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, my second favorite animated movie of the year. Guys, were any of you TMNT fans growing up?
I was not really.
Big fan?
Yeah.
Okay. I would watch like the animated series from time to time, but I wasn't like a huge fan. But I did want to ask that before we got started, because I feel like this movie is very it's open in terms of being accessible to people who aren't fans and people who have been diehard fans for a long time. But I wanted to get your thoughts. What did you guys think of the movie?
I mean, I loved it. First off, as someone who was not even a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles person, the after credit scene got me juiced. It got me juiced. But I mean, I loved it. Like, I was still, I was born in the 90s, so I still knew of Teenage Mutant Ninja. Like, I got it, right? So it was still, and I think similar to a lot of the good animated movies, or just like a lot of the good movies like this, like the intellectual property movies that have come out this year, it's just like they didn't try and do too much. They were it was still very, at least again, as someone who didn't watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, very true to the idea of what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was. And I appreciated that. And it was fun. I also appreciate a movie that doesn't beat you in the head with some kind of giant lesson. Like it's mutant turtles that do karate. Like, it's fun.
Its big message was we all want to be accepted.
Yeah, right.
Is,
like, and I guess it kind of did, but like it didn't really, like, at no point was I like, okay.
Right.
Like, there's definitely movies where I'm like, okay, like I get the point.
Yeah.
It wasn't exhausting with it.
And this would never felt like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it was a super, super fun movie in the way that like Mario is like it brings back a part of your childhood that you're just like sitting there the whole time and you're like, damn, this is just like it's awesome. It makes you feel really good. And then I think they did a really good job in like incorporating the fact and leaning into the fact that these are teenage turtles, which is not something that like we'd seen in like the original animes or the cartoons. So I thought that was really cool.
No, you hit the nail on the head about that. Like, I have been a fan my whole life. One of my favorite memories is my cousin turning me on to the comic books, which were ultra violent and much different than what most people know are the Turtles, right? And then when the animated series, when I was kind of linked to that, it was kind of tame and hokey by comparison, right? And the one thing neither one of those really did a good job of was showing the Turtles to be teenagers, right? And that's the one thing I loved about this was not only did it do the best job of that I think anybody has ever done in telling the story of the Turtles, but it also had that balance between like the ultra violent past that they had in their inception as comic book characters and that kind of like sweet side that everybody knows of them, from those cartoons and the Playmate toys and everything like that from the 90s.
Let's talk about that decision, because I thought that was a really smart decision to have actual like kids or younger people voice the Turtles instead of, because every other adaptation we've had recently, they've been like adults. And I feel like this fully leaned into like they're also just a bunch of dumb kids.
They stole the show when it came to that. I mean, this is an all-star cast as far as the voice cast is concerned. And I didn't care about that. All I cared about was the Turtles, because they gave them such personality. I mean, that's a big thing is that a lot of times the Turtles are all kind of the same. And like, there was no doubt that they had their own kind of personalities here, but it was the voices. It was the voices of the Turtles that really made this, I felt like, a really special movie.
Yeah, and I mean, you meant like it was really in like an all-star cast, and I think in that, like, that's almost it made it stick out more, because it's like, as opposed to having another celebrity that voicing one of these Turtles, which I'm sure would have been fine. Like, it is like, oh, you have your Seth Rogen's and your John Cena's playing these guys or whatever, but then you also have Ice Cube with the rap references that he dropped in throughout.
So great.
The Drake reference straight up to my face. Fake love straight up to my face. I was like, oh, that's
good. that part of like leaning into like modern culture as well was really, really
and
cool.
that's part of like the kids thing. Like, it felt genuine. Like, and this is something that Derek had brought up to me before I had even seen it, but like the scene where they're all standing outside and they're all like kind of just saying
off each
different
other.
New York
They're talking about the vernacular.
We outside. And I'm like, that is like, that was me. Like, I was yelling that shit for like 3 straight years.
That was me coming into this office being around you guys. That was literally
like, it really hit, and it really felt like they took a page out of Spider-Man, and they just, it was just a good movie, man. It was a really good animated movie.
Yeah, I loved it because it was so charming, so accessible, so easy for anybody who hasn't seen past Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff to access it. The cast was stacked, but like you said, I think the 4 stood out. But it was cool. Like Jackie Chan as Master Splinter was like phenomenal.
Perfect. It was perfect.
The running joke about them being milked was
that was payoff. Oh, the best payoff.
We don't even have nipples.
I was dying. Ice Cube as the villain was great, but like you would get randoms that would pop in that you didn't even like. Paul Rudd was in there.
Paul Rudd was incredible, by the way.
Right?
The Gecko. Like, I mean, there were a few voices that stood out, and then some of them honestly kind of. I mean, I didn't know that it was even them, you know. So
like John Cena, I don't think was really
he was rock steady, right?
Yeah, he was one of the two big guys.
And so, like, I don't know. I mean, the ones that stood out, like you said, like Jackie Chan, Paul Rudd. There were a couple that seemed necessary, but then there were a lot that were like. With this cast, just kind of another voice.
Yeah,
but Jackie Chan has the market of being like the martial arts old man guru, just locked down.
He does,
and he did it in an animated film.
He got it locked down. But like, the cast was also shout out Seth Rogen. Like he's one of the big producers on the movie, and he realized his place. He didn't need to be that big of a deal in the movie, which I appreciated.
He didn't like dominate it at all. I thought Ayo Edebiri from. What's the show? The Bear. Thank you. Yeah. She was great as April O'Neil.
Yeah.
Giancarlo Esposito. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, I know who that is. And how to what's it called? What We Do in the Shadows. If anybody watches that, one of the vampires from that, she was in it as well. They got a really stacked cast for this movie.
It's almost like all of these people knew that they were going to go to work soon, and they were just they were all signing up for some big gigs.
It's also, I feel like there are so many, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel like with some of these movies that you see, like the stacked casts of like the Mario is just another great example of like these people again grew up or like they were in such like an influential time in their life when these cartoons and these animes were really popping off that they're like, hell yeah, I want to be a part of something like this.
Well, that's what it feels like about the people making them. You know, like I feel like that's why IPs now are so well taken care of, is because they are putting the money behind them, but the people that they're putting in charge, like Seth Rogen, they love it, and they're trying to make the best version.
It's not
of
the
it,
90s where they're just trying to make money.
Yeah,
it's adults making money off a kids' cartoon. It's people who grew up with the kids' cartoon.
I mean, it can be both things. It can be it can be a big franchise that makes lots of money, and it can also be good.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
100%.
It was fresh in every sense because we already talked about making the choice to make them younger, make them kids, make them authentic and lovable, despite it being a ridiculous premise. It's about heroes in a half shell who got transformed by ooze.
I like that.
But it's also like they really leaned into that as far as the art style, because that would like. Okay, Across the Spider-Verse takes the cake this year for like animated films.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this was not far off of that because it looked like sketches and doodles that had like come to life. It was all like concept artwork that was there and
like
living.
The humans.
Yeah.
The faces were very like they were like, obviously it was well done, but they were like very abstract in a lot of ways. It was like it was
very stylized. And I mean, it goes beyond like just trying to look like a comic book. That's the thing I like about it, is it does have a very comic book feel, but they were just trying to do their own thing, where it's like, this is an animated, show or a movie, and like we want to show it, kind of true to its original style to an extent. There was a lot of controversy about April O'Neil not being a hot redhead and stuff like that. And that was super stupid because, like you said, all the humans were stylized in this. And all that mattered was that Leonardo was in love with her. And that's like the main
and also,
takeaway,
like,
right?
They're turtles.
Right.
Right. they're turtles.
We're talking about human turtles.
No, it's just fanboys from the 90s wanting to still have their love interest from when they were kids is what that one is. But no, I mean, the style was great. I watched it in 3D, and it was really awesome to watch it in 3D because it was really that stylization was enhanced by the 3D, but it didn't wasn't a cheesy 3D movie because they didn't make it for that purpose. It just it looked really cool.
Yeah, that style is slowly becoming my favorite type of movie to go see, because they're nailing it every time, it feels like.
It's incredible visually. Anything else that we want to shout out? I know you mentioned the tease, spoiler alert, at the end with Shredder. I have to give love to the soundtrack because the
That's what I was
soundtrack
about
was
to
incredible.
The scene when they first finally see Superfly and they hop out and they're playing the Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I was literally sitting in the thing. I was singing, I was dancing. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Like I'm rooting for Ice Cube at this point, honestly.
I was like, it was good, and also it was a good villain. Like, I mean, it at the end of the day, it's like it is a superhero movie, I guess, and like it was a good villain. It was I feel like Killmonger kind of revolutionized how villains in movies like this, like it's a movie it's a villain that's like he's kind of right, like he's right.
Yes,
he's maybe not going about it the right way, but at the end of the day, he is right.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I thought that it was because we all know Shredder, right? And we all know that that's where it's inevitably going to go, even if we didn't get the post-credit scene that we got.
Right.
But like there was something very smart about doing this as the first villain because you said it. It's a silly story about turtles turning into mutants, right? But like they made a very good case as to why there's all of these mutants and not just the turtles, and how the turtles became the turtles, and how Master Splinter became to be. Everything about it, like the way that they learned martial arts by watching martial arts videos because they all have to stay like in the sewer and they have nothing better to do. So they're just down there getting some, getting some training because Splinter thinks that the humans are coming for him at any point. So like for them to be like ready to fight at any time makes a lot of sense. It's a silly story, but when they actually give it, a little bit of thought, they can make it, make sense why now there's all of these, creatures running around, New York that are all mutants. I love that cast. That's a big part of what makes Turtles the Turtles. Like I loved all the other guys. And I love the fact that even the good guys and the bad guys and everybody we know, like Mondo, we know Rocksteady and Bebop, we know where these guys stand. But like it was just a really great villain to like have the Turtles be introduced and the story be told. It also was great to see them all hanging out at like a bowling alley and having fun. Of course, Raphael was hanging out with Rocksteady and Bebop, which I was like, that makes a lot of sense right there. Those guys hanging out. But they just did such a good job of making it not too complicated, but telling you why all of this world is the way it is right now.
That's another thing though I found hilarious was like the scene where all of the bad guys just were like, oh yeah, we don't want to do this. Like it was like very much like oh, we didn't realize there was an option here. And like but it also like I feel like very easily you can get like, oh, so all of them just like they just changed their minds all of a sudden, and it had been really like lame and cheesy, but it was very like still even that felt genuine. It was like, oh, we have an option,
right?
I guess we're not going to do this. Like I just was waiting for somebody to say it.
You brought up the bowling scene, and I thought that was really cool too, because not the entire premise, but a big part of it, right, is like these turtles want to eventually get to high school, and they're at this bowling alley, and it's so sectioned off in like cliques with the turtles and the animals. It's like a little high school that they've got right there. It's a mutant high school.
Everybody found their own, little
well, I
group
mean, at the end of this movie, when they go to high school, that's exactly what happens too.
Right.
Like you see them hanging out to like one of them wrestling. They're outside with like all the computer people. Like that's exactly what happens. And so they were looking. They were doing it. They were looking for acceptance in the wrong places.
Shout out to Eastman High School, by the way. That was a cool little Easter egg. That's the guy that created the Turtles, right? Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, it was good because every step of the way it felt relatable in terms of them just wanting to be accepted. But like you said, it wasn't overbearing or like beat you over the head with its message. Yeah. I am curious before we move on to complaints and concerns, which turtle are you?
Donatello.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think I am, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm probably more of a Michelangelo, but I don't know. Donatello has always been my favorite, and I always thought like his resourcefulness. Like I thought they did a good job of making that a part of his character. He had on all the fanny packs and stuff, so he could carry all of his stuff. And,
right.
Like, they just the personalities really shine through in this movie.
I would probably say a Leonardo. I feel like I always like Leonardo. I'm very much Leonardo.
There's no doubt about that.
What about you guys?
I don't know. I'm leaning toward Mikey, man. I'm leaning toward Mikey. Just like, just the vibes, especially in this movie too, of just like the entire personality of him. I feel like I just have to lean into that as best as I can. So,
I want to say I feel like everyone wants to be a Leonardo. I feel like I'm a Donatello, if I'm being honest. Like, especially when I was younger and a teenager, like that was very, like I was a massive nerd. Like I would have had to wear the glasses over the face mask and everything like that. Like that was especially as a teenager, who I was for sure.
I do want to say this. I also longed to be in Ferris Bueller's Day Off myself, so I can really relate to that.
That was awesome.
Just taking a step back to the style, of the movie, like what a cool move to just have that movie really playing in the movie. Like I loved stuff like that they did.
Yeah. Any complaints or concerns with the movie?
My one thing is like I guess not new villain, because we know it's going to be Shredder, but like the woman that's running the thing, like the stereotypical heavy ass Eastern European accent. I'm just like, okay, like, all right, like okay, we get it. But like that was like really one of the only things where I was just like, as soon as she started talking, it's like, are we doing this? Yeah. Like the villain's going to be some shady woman from Eastern Europe or Russia, like.
Well, was that Maya Rudolph?
Maya Rudolph,
yeah.
Oh, was it? I didn't even realize that. That's funny, I guess. It's still, I'm like, that's okay.
No, that's fair. I think my biggest one was like, obviously, and this is not a knock on it. It's more geared toward children, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
And it is like like the story, the plot itself is pretty basic. It's a basic superhero origin story, but I thought the way that they told it and the artistic style of it and just how relatable it was the whole way kind of made up for those minor complaints.
Yeah.
I hate that they have to do like the kaiju thing at the end of like an animated film is getting kind of like played out where the villain becomes gigantic overly powerful.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Just like has
I
become
appreciated
like
the Attack on Titan references though.
No, that
like,
for sure.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was cool.
And also like the Super Shredder references that they kind of had when he was turning with the ooze. But like there was just I don't know, like I felt like there was a better way to do it, and I felt like I checked out a bit when we got to that because it's just I've seen it so many times.
Yeah,
it didn't feel necessary.
Another complaint, like that the scene where Donatello or Leonardo is sitting there being like, use your anger for good. And like, you watch all these movies, you can figure something out. I'm like, okay, what kind of 80s ass feel good story shit is this? Like, I get it. Like, of course the nerd is he's gonna lean back on all of his time watching anime to figure out how to beat the big supervillain. Like, all right.
It was cheesy, but I did like the Attack on Titan.
Yeah, that's the second thing I like that reference, but that very specific scene, I was at that moment, I was just like, okay, like I can't use your anger for good.
I don't have any like complaints. I think my only concern is, I guess, like a similar thing that I have with, again, going back to Mario, is like for the sequel, are you going to be able to keep it up while also not making it like just kind of extend on for no reason? Like, is the story going to be worth telling the entire time? And are you going to be able to execute it the same way that you did this one? Or is it going to be where you get a sequel and everyone's just like, the first one?
Yeah, I will say, though, that's one thing that they did well, and I feel like Mario did well, is they set themselves up to like, when you think of you think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like you think of Shredder. And so like they have left out the big supervillain until the second one. And I mean, Mario, obviously you have the main characters, but like, you think Mario, you think Yoshi before you get too far down the list of Mario characters. And he was like, those were the after credit scenes. So like
they know what they're doing when it comes to setting
they're giving you something to wait for.
Right.
Whereas like Avatar, for example, it's like the story's the story. Like it's
the same story.
And it's the same story. Literally like, you get to the second one and it's like,
that's what you get.
They're doing the same thing all over.
But the talking whale was different. Okay, stop it.
Do we have one of those moments? Do we have a talking whale moment?
I don't think so. I don't think we had
the Superfly moment was the cool.
That was pretty funny.
Where I was just like, it was cracking me up. Like this was a movie that was supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
Like that's why.
And that wasn't to that same level. I think the funniest part for me was when Superfly talks for the first time, and you're like, that's fucking Ice Cube.
It out to the Bruno Mars was
that
got me.
That was funny.
That was funny.
No, man, I still I think one, like I liked it and I also could criticize it, was like how many characters they felt they needed to fit into this movie, because when you talk about that, getting that out of a franchise, right? Getting the length, getting as many movies as you can out of it. A lot of those characters could have been introduced down the road and it would have been cool. But maybe introducing them now allows you to utilize them in the world.
Yeah, that's one thing. So like one thing I don't have much of a frame of reference for as being someone who wasn't a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like if you asked me to name the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters before this movie, I would have said Shredder, Splinter, the Turtles in April. Like that's about all I do. So
I mean,
I didn't even have real much of a frame of reference for where like the mutants character. Those are like known characters.
They were like it was like a vehicle for toys. So you got to think about that. Like there was a lot of things in the 80s and 90s where all they really wanted to do was sell toys. Right?
New characters they could sell,
a lot of these characters that they're using, and it's kind of like the Shredder's Revenge game. They like finally started to incorporate characters and like vehicles and stuff that we never saw in the show. They were just stuff that they made toys of for us to buy, right? So like a lot of these characters kind of were that because they just wanted to like produce another series of figures. And now the Turtles are going to be in costumes, I guess. And now they're going to be this, like whatever they could to keep selling toys, right? So they have a robust, universe of nostalgia to draw from as far as like guys like me are concerned that we'll remember these guys. And we'll even get geeked out by we're like, ooh, Ray used to have an eye patch. Now they put a little like little was it like a mask over his eye so his eye can be in the water. Like that's kind of funny.
Oh, we didn't even fucking Post Malone.
Yeah,
we didn't even mention him
I
yet.
forgot about
That
Post
was
Malone.
crazy. Because I literally the movie ended and David and I turned to each other and like we were like, who was Post Malone? And he's the fucking singing Stingray. That was that.
So great.
I'm interested to see where they go because to your point, like I feel like we're getting to the point because like for fans of Marvel and Star Wars, we're used to just the latest thing being churned out and not being given the time and attention it probably deserves. And that's a concern with the Mario stuff. Every movie franchise now has to have its own cinematic fucking universe to work. So I hope that they're able to keep up the level of quality as they continue to go down. I think leaving Shredder for the sequel helps set them up for success. But final scores out of 10 for this one.
I'm going to give it an 8. And the only reason I'm going to give it an 8 and not something a little bit higher is because for me, Across the Spider-Verse, in terms of style, like these are in like the same, but Across the Spider-Verse was an absolute 10 for me. Is my favorite movie of the year.
Right.
So I feel like because of that, I have to judge this like in that same area. So it probably would get higher just depending on, I guess I have to see the sequel to really judge where this goes. But I think it's a solid movie. And if you haven't seen it, you definitely should go see it.
I'm going to give it a 9 because I absolutely I loved it. I love the style. I love the Turtles. I love the way they told it. But most importantly, I love the way that the actors that played the Turtles really kind of stole the show, which is how it should be. I thought that they just were so much fun to listen to them talk and get excited, their relationships with each other. It was just, even Raphael, who's normally like a dick that I don't really like. I mean, they did such a good job of even making him like lovable, but still keeping him who he always has been. I mean, it was just for me an all-around great movie.
I'm gonna hop in the middle, go 8.5. I mean, I'm a sucker for a great soundtrack. And so you get some of like the songs in there, and it gets me. And then I'm a sucker for an ensemble cast too. And so hearing like it sealed its fate for me as a good movie when you have Ice Cube as a giant fly with an afro making Drake references. I'm gonna like that movie. It doesn't matter for the other hour and a half. So like I really enjoyed it. I appreciate a movie that is gonna lean into some of like that pop culture in a way that doesn't seem cheesy or insincere. And it's fun. Like I said, I wasn't a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guy, but it did have that sense of kind of 90s nostalgia that I always will appreciate.
And I do want to say this is that in regards to where they could go with this, there is so much, like there's so many comic book story arcs that are good and things that they can go down. There's this whole Last Ronin thing that they could go down. So there's a lot of different directions that they could take this series, that they have that groundwork kind of already. Yeah.
And also we don't like,
and people don't know,
they don't know us more than 2 movies.
No, that's
like
true.
They could just stop making them. Like we're Americans and we always want more. But like with the same with the Mario thing, like they could just stop after they like Avatar. They could have just stopped. They made one great movie. They could have just stopped. Mario, they could introduce Yoshi, kill Mario 2, and then they can just stop. Like, or not kill off Mario, but like
that'd be pretty
do
crazy.
really good with that movie and then stop.
The problem is both of those movies made over $1 billion.
I know. That is the problem. But from an artistic standpoint, like they could just stop eventually. Leave us with the good stuff. I know that's not how that works, but they could.
I feel like they're really taking advantage. Like again, Mario, Across the Spider-Verse, and then obviously this movie of like in a time, at least for me, where it feels like Marvel and Star Wars is almost lagging behind. It's starting to hit a point of like,
It just got old.
Okay, there's something like it's a changing of the guard almost for all the actors and actresses there. So it was a perfect time to release some of these movies and potentially get some new universes because people want something fresh and new. I think there's a lot of people that are just like, okay, what's next with Marvel? What's next with Star Wars? And they're giving you something completely
The film
different.
gods just dropping all these great movies and then being like, and Hollywood's not doing it.
Good luck waiting for it. I think it really is because you said Marvel, but then you also talk about a Spider-Man movie, right? I think a lot of it is the way they're doing them, the style that they're doing them, and the fact that like we as adults are loving these movies, even though they're supposed to be animated films for kids, and that's because they're not making them for kids; they're making them for essentially everybody.
We want creativity, we want ingenuity, we want fresh takes on things we've seen before, and that's the lesson that Marvel and Star Wars need to learn. And I swear to God, if they fuck up Ahsoka, I'm going to be so mad. But
your rating?
My rating, I'm with you. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a fun, light movie where you can just sit down, be entertained, not beaten over the head with a message or it has the nostalgia, but it doesn't lean so heavily on that. It's a fresh take. And any movie that has Annie Up in it is automatically going to get like a 0.5 boost from me. That song gets me fucking hyped every time.
Let's go.
But I think that's going to do it for this edition of G-Rated. You can follow me on Twitter at Gerald Bourget. You can follow Shawn at Shawn_DePaz. You can follow Totri at Anthony_Totri. And you can follow Derek at Cap_Caveman.
With a K.
Until next time, keep it G-Rated.